Welcome to The Pursuit, a podcast produced by the Junior Board of the Chicago and Midwest chapter of the National Academy of Television, Arts, and Sciences, otherwise known as NATAS. We're a group of emerging media professionals seeking insight from leaders in our fields. My name is Sam Brief. I am the Assistant Director of Communications and Broadcasting over at Chicago State University, and also the voice of the Chicago Dogs baseball team. And I'm also, proudly, your host for this episode. And I'm really thrilled to bring aboard NBC5's Mike Berman, who is now a sports anchor and reporter in his hometown. He's like me. He's a north suburb kid. He went to Glenbrook North. I'm from Highland Park. And he, from a very young age, was like, this is what I want to do. Storytelling, sports, TV, production, and I want to do it in my hometown. Now, Mike had to take a little roundabout route. He went to the University of Missouri, great journalism school, the first journalism school down there, and then he went over to Springfield, Illinois, to Indianapolis, to Austin, and then back home to Chicago. And now he has a ton of pinch me moments where he's in places like Wrigley Field at the World Series, and Soldier Field at a Bears game, and London at a Bears game, and covering the teams he grew up watching. And Mike is a tremendous, tremendous person to talk to, not only because he's passionate and talented and all that great stuff, but because he's giving. I've experienced firsthand how giving he is with his time, with his energy, with his advice. And I know for a lot of the listeners of this Pursuit podcast, the advice that Mike has, it's gem advice. So I really suggest you listen all the way to the end of this wonderful podcast. So without further ado, let's get started. Mike Berman of NBC5 and the latest Pursuit podcast. Thrilled to bring aboard NBC5's Mike Berman, both a tremendously talented sports anchor, reporter, storyteller, but more than that, a talented person in being generous, giving. Those two words mean the same thing, but it really tells you what this guy's all about. So, Mike, before we dive into it, just how you doing? Because I know you're talking to me from Cleveland. You're getting ready to cover a big Bears-Browns game.
Well, first of all, thank you for the generous and kind introduction. I appreciate it. And I'm thrilled to be with you. Thank you for asking me. Very, very, very honored. And yeah, here I am sitting in lovely Cleveland in a beautiful airport Hilton Garden Inn, and I have a gorgeous view of the parking lot here from my room. And in all seriousness, I am excited to see what Justin Fields can do as his, as he makes his debut as an NFL starter. Tons of hype behind him, tons of reason to be excited for Bears fans. And it's not an easy assignment being on the road at a legit playoff team, potential Super Bowl contender. But I think if anyone's up to the task, it's Fields. He's cool, calm, collected. He's very even keeled. He's accomplished a lot in college, and he's got a great skill set. So whenever people listen to this, they'll know what happened. And I'm just excited to see what does happen today.
This is a little slice of history because we're talking right now 4 hours before kickoff. And by the time people listen to this, it will be weeks, months, maybe years after kickoff. And who knows? He could be anything from a Super Bowl MVP and Hall of Fame quarterback to a total bust, or probably
to Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a little slice of history. I will snip that little snippet.
Okay.
But Mike, enough about Fields, and now let's dive into Mike. And I want to start with the way we're starting all of these Pursuit podcasts, and that's focusing on your pursuit. Take me back, and when was the moment when you knew that you wanted to pursue the career you've got?
I don't think there was a moment, but it was kind of a collection of moments. I grew up in Northbrook and went to Glenbrook North, and they had a really good broadcast program that taught you how to shoot and edit. And I mean, everything from, the basics of white balancing a camera to writing a script to editing together a highlight package. And I was fortunate enough to, right as a freshman, take intro to broadcasting class, and I fell in love with it and just took some version of sports broadcasting all 8 of my high school semesters, and I loved it. It was the best. And I was like, because I grew up a guy who played sports and loved it, and I was like, okay, if I'm not good enough to keep playing, which, let's make it clear, I wasn't, then how else could I stay involved? And doing sports broadcasting was like, it was the perfect fix for my love of sports. And I also did enjoy writing and storytelling. So it was like, put that all together, and I was full steam ahead trying to do this as I looked off into the future and going to college.
I'm smiling as I hear you say this because you could be describing me, and I think a few other people who have pursued specifically sports broadcasting, because it is a really specific thing, right? I mean, sports is much different than straight news, than politics. It's sports, and it's something we grew up doing, right? Even if you want to cover politics, like, no one grows up doing politics. I mean, I guess you could run for student council, but you and I and many others grew up playing sports. I'll speak for myself. You kind of alluded to it, but being very awful at the playing of sports.
Now, wait a second. I didn't say very awful.
That's what I said for myself.
Mediocre. Okay, you were talking about yourself. Okay, good.
Okay, so you were mediocre. I was awful. Neither of us were destined for the NFL.
No.
I am curious about that, though, Mike. In your pursuit, what role the playing of sports and falling short in that played? Because I've sort of heard two. I'm putting people in 2 buckets here very generally. One is like, oh, I thought I was destined for Major League Baseball. Then I realized in college that I wasn't going to cut it. So I just sort of picked this thing up and started doing it. And the other is, for me personally, where I fall, which is more like, I learned very early that I love sports, but like, I've got no shot. And honed this career. So which of those buckets do you fall into, or is there a third bucket I'm kind of missing?
No, very much the latter. I mean, I would characterize my athletic talents growing up as pretty good, decent to pretty good. And I played varsity baseball and varsity golf and some hoops in high school. So, I was good enough to be playing varsity sports, but above all, it was just my love of sports in general, and the way that I don't think it's the playing that shaped me getting into this career as much as it is like just how much of a diehard fan I was. I mean, growing up, it was everything. I was a boy who was eating and sleeping and breathing sports and devouring the sports section in the paper and watching every Bulls game, growing up during the Jordan era, watching every Bulls game, watching every Cubs game. I was a Cubs fan growing up, and watching all of that and watching every Bears game. So I think it was my love of watching games that shaped me into someone who really wanted to do this for a career. And I do think that the storytelling that's behind sports journalism and that's so important with it is what really drove me in the end, because I was also involved in the newspaper at Glenbrook North writing sports. And I think that was a little taste of, I always liked to write, but I think that was a little taste of where the storytelling as it relates to sports journalism comes in. So it was kind of a combination of really enjoying writing and storytelling, as well as being a big sports fan. I think bringing those two together was the driving reason that I wanted to pursue it.
Oh, it's a beautiful marriage, right? Because
Oh
sports
yeah.
are so fun. There are so many people in sports, right? From all the players on the team to the coaches, to the support staff, to the front office staff, to the fans, and all of them have unique stories. And at the same time, then they get to play on the field, and each game is a story, right? It's kind of
Oh yeah.
snowballs, and you fire me up talking about it. And I'd like to know, when you were growing up and you were reading these stories and consuming all this stuff, and you said watching sports really spurred the passion for you, who were some of those inspirations? Who were some of the storytellers that got you going?
Well, I remember growing up and watching, I would say maybe this was a little more high school and college, and maybe even after college, but I I loved watching real sports on HBO. Um, they have such an extended amount of time to tell the great stories. And so, there were so many great correspondents telling the stories over the years that I was watching. Frank DeFord and Bernie Goldberg and Mary Carrillo, and the list goes on. Just such talented journalists, and you really got to meet and get to know an athlete off the field, and what makes them tick, or what story is special about them that helped them rise to this level of prominence that they did. And so those are real sports will always stick out as something that was inspirational and that made me love storytelling and sports journalism even more. But I do remember, growing up in Chicago, in terms of a sports broadcaster, Mark Giangreco for me was always, you know, uh, just someone that I was so impressed with. And I had an opportunity to intern for him one summer during college. And he's just incredible in the way that he touches every little aspect of what goes into making a broadcast great. And I learned so much from him, and always enjoyed watching him. And there are so many local people in TV sports in Chicago that I enjoyed watching growing up. There's just so much talent that's come through the local news stations, and of course, so many great writers, and the Sun Times and the Trib and the Daily Herald. So it's just, I've always enjoyed looking at and listening to and reading the people who are the best in their craft. And I think that's always been something that's helped me learn, but always been inspirational, that, hey, there's people who've done this, who've accomplished their dream of getting to Chicago, of doing this in a big market. So, hopefully I can too.
I can relate to that. And yeah, I'm not trying to be overly sappy here, but you are one of those people for me in similar upbringing. You went to GBN, I went to Highland Park, and you're one of those people that I have watched since you came back to Chicago from Austin, when you were down in Texas when we first linked up. But for me, it's also not just in the storytelling and what you do and what other great people do, but it's the way you carry yourself, right? Because there's a professional way and a humanistic way to carry yourself and to be kind and giving to others. And for me, it's looking at you and others and saying, okay, like that, I can be that, because that's like a really nice person who's a part of an industry that's full of really nice people. And yes, it's competitive because a lot of people want to do it, but it's just as much about that for me as it is the storytelling. And Mike, you mentioned the internship with Giangreco, and Mark's great. His nephew went to high school with me, so I've known him for a while too.
Okay.
And interning with him sounds like a blast. And internships in general are like a workshop, right? You're like an apprentice, and it's really where you learn a lot. So I'm curious your internship history and what you feel were some of the big takeaways from those.
So I did, I think 3 internships during college. After my freshman year, I interned at the Pioneer Press. I was a sports writer.
Me too.
You did? Are you kidding?
What?
Amazing.
Yeah. Holy.
That's so great.
I didn't know you interned at the Pioneer Press.
I did. The sports editor was Larry Watts. Is that who you worked with?
No. Mine was John Borneman and then Ryan Nilsson.
Okay.
Wow. Look at that.
Well, it's like, are you a long lost relative?
I guess so.
And I think that internship taught me a couple things about storytelling, because that's really at the heart of, in TV, there is an element of the local sportscast that's running down the highlights, but there's much more storytelling in print. That's kind of at the heart of everything. So it taught me about that, but it also taught me I didn't want to do that. I realized I didn't want to be a beat writer. I think that's kind of one of the things that I thought I might want to be when I was leaving high school and going to college. But that taught me, I liked the visual. I liked the element of matching video to script and using natural sound. And I liked myself being on camera. So, and I hope anyone who's listening truly takes this to heart. It can be just as valuable to figure out what you don't want to do as it is to figure out what you do. So that doesn't mean that it's a lost opportunity or a waste of time. So I hope that everyone will listen to that. And then after that, the next summer, I interned at WGN Radio Sports, which was awesome. I was interning with David Kaplan and Tom Waddle. They did Sports Central.
That sounds like a who. You, David Kaplan, and Tom Waddle.
Well, I mean, I wasn't a part of the fun. I was just listening and watching, but it was awesome. And those guys were, especially Kaplan, were so great to me, and learned so much there. And I think that I realized, you know what, I like the sports element here, but again, radio is not what I want to chase. I want to chase the TV thing. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to, the next summer after my junior year at Missouri, to intern at Channel 7. And I learned so much from not just Mark G. Greco and Jim Rose, and Jeff Blanzy was there when I was interning, but also all the producers and photographers. So that I was just so fortunate to have that opportunity and to be able to learn and grow that way. And that really solidified, you know what? Yep, I want to do the TV thing.
And you're doing the TV thing. I mean, you're really doing the TV thing, and you're doing it in your hometown after going to Springfield, which is in your home state, far from your hometown though, and then
right,
Texas, and now you're doing it in Chicago. So what does it mean to you to actually be home, covering the teams you grew up watching? Like, I'm sure there are pictures of little Mike in like a Bulls uniform, and now next thing you know, you're interviewing Bulls players in a suit and tie. So what does that mean to you?
And by the way, I did a quick pit stop between Austin and Chicago and Indianapolis.
Right.
So that was a great sports town to be in too.
And you've got to cover the Indy 500 there, right?
Yes, which is incredible.
That's like near the top of my bucket list to go to.
I mean, I tell anyone who will listen that even if you don't like car racing, it is a must attend sporting event for a sports fan. It's just so cool. So highly recommend. But to answer your question, it really is a blessing, and it's surreal, man. I mean, because the pursuit of it felt like I spent 10 years working in local sports TV before I was able to get back home and be working in Chicago. And I'm very lucky, and I was made better by those 10 years and all the stops that I made. But at times those 10 years felt like, 20 or 30 years, because you're really hoping and chasing this dream of being in Chicago, and there's never a guarantee it's going to happen. So all that is to say, in short, it's amazing, and it's surreal at times. It is a job, so I can't get caught up in, oh my God, I'm covering my hometown teams, and I remember this guy cheering for this guy, or you can't get caught up in that because you got a job to do and you got to do it well. But there's certainly moments before games or after games where I'm like, I can't believe this actually happened, and I'm so fortunate that it did. I mean, the chance to cover all the teams that I grew up cheering for and still care about, the chance to interview the people that I have and take the road trips that I have. I don't know, I must have done something right along the way. I feel very, very lucky to have the opportunity.
It is, on paper, and I know in practice, like, it's a dream job, right? It's one of those jobs that, if you woke up and for whatever reason you said, yeah, I'm going to hang it up, I'm just going to stop, like, there would be a line out the door and down the street and around the corner and around another corner to replace you, right? And you have one of those jobs. You're doing it in Chicago. Clearly you treat it with that sort of reverence and as a blessing. But as you said, and I want to go back to when you said, I have to remember it is a job. And even what I'm doing at the very early end of my career, which feels right now like a dream come true. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I love my job. I'm fired up. It is amazing. There are moments where work is work, right? And you're busy and you're stressed. And no doubt, even if you have a dream job, that happens. So can you take me into what it's like for you having this dream job, but still sometimes dealing with the day-to-day work stresses?
Well, the reality is, excuse me, as you get to talk to more pro athletes and know more pro athletes, what you'll find is, because they have the ultimate dream job, right? They're playing and they're getting paid really well to do it, and they're flying, like millionaires, billionaires, first class style, and staying in the best hotels and catered to, that is the ultimate dream. But even they're human beings. So yeah, they've got a problem at a family issue, or heck, over the last 18 months, the stress that a pandemic has placed on people, and wanting to stay healthy and keep their family healthy, whatever it is, every job has stressors and ups and downs and great days and more challenging days. So that certainly applies to being a sports broadcaster in Chicago. And I think it's just important that you do your best to, when it's time to work, just have a laser focus on what you're doing. And so yeah, sometimes for me that might be putting aside some stress to do a sportscast or a live shot. And I think there is a element of talent to being able to do that and executing it well, because it is challenging to, even in the first place, it can be challenging in let's say for a live shot in a really loud, boisterous scenario, that can be challenging to focus, to be able to hear what the anchor throwing to you is saying, to be able to hear a producer in your ear, to be able to focus despite all the noise. And yeah, if you're feeling a little stressed, to do all of that, do it well, despite feeling stressed. But what I do is no different than what anyone does for a living, in that you're always having to navigate different challenges and ups and downs in life and stresses to do your best in your job. So I'm just doing it where I'm on TV. That's the only difference.
What's the biggest pinch me moment in going through the day to day? Like that prep, sitting there, you mentioned the loud, boisterous arena. Like, take me into the loudest, most boisterous moment where you're like, dang, here I am.
Well, I mean, when it comes to Chicago, I think it was running out onto the field at Wrigley after the Cubs won the pennant to get to the World Series. All the media was waiting in a hallway near the Cubs clubhouse, and then they let us onto the field. And just coming out onto the field and seeing the way the crowd was reacting and the players celebrating, and then doing interviews for what seemed like an hour on the field there as we were live wall to wall. That was an incredible pinch me moment. Especially, as I said, I grew up a Cubs fan. My dad, huge Cubs fan. So that was pretty incredible. Another one was being at the Bears game in London. I thought that was so cool because, it was just a regular season game, but it was like, whoa, the Bears are playing in London and I'm being paid to be here and cover it. That was really awesome. The reality is, I think my biggest pinch me moments are not games or practices or big press conferences. I think they're when I walk into the NBC tower and I see the NBC logo, the peacock logo, and I'm walking, through the little hallway that we have to walk through to get into the newsroom. And there's pictures of all the people who are on air, and my picture is one of them hanging there. So that is probably, for me, the ultimate pinch me moment, because as I was traveling this road of, local TV sports and hoping and praying and being so focused on getting home, to walk through the halls of NBC5, which I grew up watching, and to see my picture there amongst, next to Allison Rosati. Are you kidding me? And, Rob Stafford and Brant Miller, people who have been there so long and accomplished so much and so talented. But to me, that's when it really hits me most.
That's fascinating to me, that it's not even the World Series.
Don't get me wrong. Well, the World Series is probably takes the cake.
Well, yeah, that was
covering the World Series at Wrigley, and like I said, that the night the Cubs clinched the pennant to go back to the World Series for the first time since 1945. Those were special memories, special experiences. I'll never forget those. But I think the day-to-day pinch me is more in walking into NBC Tower than just covering, being in the locker room we don't go in any locker rooms now, but pre-pandemic, being in the Bears locker room, because I've been in so many different locker room settings like that. But it wasn't until I was in Chicago that I was walking into NBC Tower and anchoring or reporting on Channel 5.
There's something about logos that means so much when you're a part of it. right? You mentioned the Peacock logo. Sometimes I watch a game and I see, the NBC jackets or the CBS jackets. I'm like, oh, I want one of those. Or, the ESPN logo. I had one of those moments the other day because I'm over at Chicago State and we're going to have our games for basketball and volleyball on ESPN Plus this year. And as a part of that, we're getting shipments of, different equipment and different things to kind of beef up the broadcasts. And the other day, I got a delivery to my office from Bristol of 5 ESPN mic flags, which I've seen a million times, right? It's that white flag with the red E in a box. And I'm just sitting there like, whoa, I've got these mic flags now. I could do whatever the heck I want with these. That was a very minor pinch me moment. So I really could relate to the walk into work, look up and see the dang peacock and pinch yourself.
Yep. It's, there's just an association with NBC5 for me, having grown up and watching that station. And my parents have always watched NBC5. So, to see that logo, wearing a polo or wearing a jacket with the logo and walking into the building and seeing it, right above the main entrance at the NBC Tower. Yeah, those are like, okay, that logo means something.
And you're a part of it. And you mentioned your parents. Before we go, I want to dive into this because for me, no doubt, and I know a lot of people, the concept of life and work really materialized during the heat of the pandemic, in that we realized in some ways by being at home just maybe how much we were ignoring the rest of life before and getting too wrapped up in work. So I'm curious, as someone who is so busy, who's flying around, I mean, it's a Sunday right now and you're on the job in Cleveland, but you've got a wife, kids, dog, things you like to do back at home. So work-life balance, tell me what that means to you and how you manage it.
Well, yeah, it's definitely an element of the job. And I'm fortunate to say that, as you know, I report 98% of the time. So, and with that, and with reporting, my schedule is pretty good. I mean, there's certainly nights where there's a game to cover, or maybe a draft that's running late, but most of my days are more tilted toward the day, the day side as opposed to the night side. So I'm very fortunate that I am home for dinner and bedtime most of the time, whereas in all the other jobs that I had climbing the ladder, I was always there until the end of the late show, because either I was doing it, anchoring it or reporting on it, or in smaller markets, I was just helping produce or shoot the video that would go in the show, or, produce graphics, edit video. I'm fortunate now where in Chicago, all I am asked to handle is the on-air stuff. So, I work with a photographer, I work with producers, and those producers are editing. So, now, even though it's Chicago, I'm afforded the chance to be at home a lot for dinner and bedtime. And that's something I treasure, because it wasn't the case in previous markets. But I will say this, it's a job that, requires flexibility, not just for the travel, but for working weekends, working holidays. There's been countless times where I've had to either work on a day off, or because there was a breaking story, or be flexible in switching my schedule and switching my days off. So above all, I'm fortunate to have very supportive and very understanding family. My wife is incredible. and she's always behind me 1,000,000% and always understanding and always supportive of having to adjust schedule like that. And my parents and in-laws and sisters and brothers and in-law, I mean, I'm so lucky that they all kind of understand what comes with the job, because that is a real element of it. It's not a set schedule. It's not, you can't count on being able to be at this dinner or this event, because anything can happen on any day. And when there's a breaking story that's important, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it the right way, not cutting corners. So I think that you have to strike a work-life balance as best you can, but it really helps to have understanding people in your life, and it helps to be, upfront about the realities of the job.
The understanding people, so important.
Yeah. If you don't want to work weekends, if you don't want to work nights, if you don't want to have a flexible schedule, if you don't want to have to potentially go cover a story on a moment's notice, it's probably not the right industry for you, because those things are real.
Totally. And holidays, I mean, I've experienced this at the very beginning, right? Thanksgiving, July 4th, you're doing baseball, right? Christmas, you're doing basketball often. It's not really a thing to be available for every holiday. I've been lucky. My family will always just do like a makeup, right? I had a Thanksgiving dinner with my family like the second week of December. It's like, we'll eat turkey in December.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. No, and you are, what a great point. Like, my family is so willing to adjust for me, and there's times I feel bad about it. I mean, it's happened a million times that I've felt bad about it, because it feels like everyone's working around me. But that just speaks to, a very loving and tight family that I have. So I'm lucky about that. And, very understanding people in my life. So very fortunate to have that. They get it. They get that I'm doing something that I love, but that something is not, I don't know, doesn't fit within the confines of a 9 to 5 box.
Right. Which frankly is good. I can't do the 9 to 5 thing in an office. I know you can't either.
No.
Give me nights and weekends. Let's roll. That's when sports are played. Come on now. And
right.
You've already heaped some great advice. Your thoughts on work-life balance, I love. You said earlier that figuring out what you don't want to do can be even more valuable than figuring out what you do want to do. But I want to sort of leave it open to you before we wrap up. Is there a burning piece of advice that, knowing the audience of this podcast, which is students, up and coming professionals, is there a piece of advice that you want the world to hear?
I think it's this. It's a very challenging industry to achieve what many people want to achieve, which is, working in a big market or working nationally. However, not only is it possible, but, I'm proof that you can achieve your dream job. However, I think the biggest piece of advice is you've got to be able to exhibit some patience, because it never, ever happens when you want it to. So, yes, there is an element of having to be talented and good at what you do, but maybe equally important, or even more important, is being committed to seeing the process through. And, for some people, because of a family or financial situation, maybe they're not able to do that, because broadcasting really does not pay well when you're starting out, and working your way up. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with if you decide it's not for you. But I think if you do want to chase a big market or, a dream job, you just have to be willing to commit to the process and to have a little patience. It's very hard to do, but to trust in your ability that if I'm good enough and if I believe that I'm going to continue to get better and to grow my ability, then I'm going to get where I want to go. That it's probably not going to happen when I want it to, but I'm going to remain committed to it. I'm going to trust that I can do it. And eventually one day, fingers crossed, I will be able to do it. So it's a very simple, broad thought, but being patient, being committed to seeing it through, I think is really, really important.
It's interesting that you go on patience, because in covering sports and being around athletes, I'm often struck by how much our paths as media folks can align with their path as the athletes. They have to be patient too, right? You're, let's say, a college baseball player, and you have a horrible slump in the middle of your sophomore season. Let's say you go 0 for 18 in a horrible week. You've still got to be patient and trust that if you put in the work, maybe one day you'll get drafted and you'll make it to the show. Just like you had to be patient, and now you're doing something that you love in the city that you love, right? And young folks like me also have to be patient. So I really love that advice, and it's something that athletes do. So those of us who yap about the athletes, we might as well do it too.
Right. No, hey, listen, how many athletes have to, before they find success at the highest level, they have to, especially in baseball, they have to make their way through the minors. Hockey, there's a lot of that too. Or sometimes you're in the show or you're at the highest level, but there's a better player in front of you, and it might take that player aging or retiring or being sent to another team to elevate you to a place where you're playing every day. So yes, you've got to be patient, and patience is a really hard thing to practice. But I think it's the same for the athlete as it is for the journalist, in that talent is important and you've got to be good, but you don't always get that chance right away. So trust in your talent, that when you are in position to get that chance, then you're going to take advantage.
Be patient. It's a virtue. Trust.
It is. It really is.
I've learned from you, even though you haven't explicitly said it, I've learned from you to be kind, giving, and I love the advice you gave at the beginning too, in figuring out what you don't want to do, just as valuable, if not more, than figuring out what you do want to do. But be patient, be kind. That's from Mike Berman of NBC5 Chicago, living out the dream right now in Cleveland, getting set to cover what one way or another, or somewhere in between, could end up being a really momentous day in Chicago sports history. And Mike's there to see it. Mike's been there to see a lot. And someone who I'm proud to say I've learned a lot from, and has really given me, and hopefully you, the listeners, some nice bones to chew on. So Mike, really thank you for coming on, and I appreciate the time.
Well, I'm honored that you asked me to come on. I'm humbled by you saying nice things about me. And yes, I didn't explicitly say it, but you are absolutely right. Being kind, being nice, giving back. So I consider it a duty to anyone who is in the position that I once was, an aspiring sports journalist or journalist, to try and impart any little bit of wisdom that I can that might help them, because there were people that helped me so much along the way. And I hope with all sincerity that this podcast reaches at least one person, and maybe one little thing resonates with them, and they remember that, if I really want to do this, you know what, I can. And I would offer this: mike.berman@nbcuni.com. Email me anytime, any questions, any critiques, whatever. I'm happy to help. Don't ever hesitate.
And I'll say to those out there listening to this, take him up on that. I emailed Mike when his email was something else, because he wasn't yet at NBC. He was down in Austin at the time. But I got his email in a circuitous route that Mike and I sort of pieced together the other day at Impact Field. And I took him up on the offer, or whoever up on the offer. I emailed Mike, and now Mike and I have been in contact regularly for maybe 6 years now. So take him up on that offer. Make sure you write down that email. Again, the great Mike Berman. Thank you, my friend.
Oh, Sam, you're the best. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed it too.
I certainly did, and hope you at home also did. Mike, bear down.
Bear down.
Back here in the studio, Sam Brief with you, and a big, big thank you to Mike Berman for joining. He's great. I mean, who gives their email on a podcast? Someone like Mike. And I told him I hope a Russian hacker scientist doesn't, get a hold of that. But if you get a hold of that, I hope you use it, really, from firsthand experience, talking to Mike, learning from him, getting tips from him, and real, combo mentorship, friendship from him is awesome. He's wonderful, and I can only imagine that to grow up watching the Cubs, the Bears, the Bulls, the Hawks, the Sox, and to then cover those teams, be bumping shoulders with the players and the coaches and the executives of those teams, he pretty much lives in a constant pinch me moment. So a big thank you to Mike, the great Mike Berman of NBC5 Chicago. Make sure you watch his work on Channel 5. I told him I'm going to be watching his work later today. I'm talking here on the 26th of September. So, he was in Cleveland covering this Bears-Browns game. I told him I'm going to miss the game because I'm doing a soccer game over at Chicago State. So I'm going to miss the entire Bears game. Thus, we'll be dependent on his work. And I know he's up to that challenge. So, again, the great Mike Berman on this latest episode of the Pursuit Podcast. Again, produced by all of us here at the Junior Board of the Chicago Midwest chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. And I am your host, Sam Brief, and I hope you listen to all of the wonderful podcasts that these wonderful people have put together for you. So with that,